What made me successful as I was working with big companies and fixing problems was my ability to pull together the best of the best people in teams. And this is the other key to success. Don't act like you know everything. You are a great leader when you know what you don't know, but you go find the experts that do know what they're doing and you surround them and you trust them.
Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, where we talk about business, mindset, and the ability to start over and grow beyond anything that your wildest mind can imagine. With me as my guest is Ena Hull, and we had the opportunity to be introduced by somebody on my team. And she said, Jasmine, she's practically your neighbor, and she is so well fit for this audience. And so this is the first time I have ever reached out, sent a cold email and said, I think I need to get you in my world, because after I did a lot of research and I listened to a lot of conversations, I know that she is so perfectly suited to speak to so many of us who time and time again have had the opportunity to pivot, to start again, to reinvent, and to give ourselves the permission to do something bigger than we ever thought was possible. Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show. Ena, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
Good. I'm happy you're here. And part of the reason why I resonated so deeply with your story is you were talking about this idea of reinvention. And when somebody hears the background of your story, when somebody knows the work that you've done and the success you have created, literally from nothing, and they think, how could you, one, ever stop what you're doing? Two, how could you ever start again? And then most baffling is, how do you continue evolving and growing and getting more and attaining more and having more satisfaction and fulfillment and having a wonderful marriage and very happy, successful children? Talk to us about, first and foremost, what is a key takeaway that you look back at your very illustrious career and say, this is the number one thing I'm taking now, and then we'll get into the backstory of what brought you here.
So I think as I look through my career, there were a lot of highs and lows. And as I even prepared for this discussion with you.
Hold on, we have to tell people how you prepared. Ladies and gentlemen, Ena, this is the first time, I'm 5 years podcasting, that a guest comes to me, has printed out notes, has a copy graphic of my podcast.
I do.
She came, I mean, listen, lest anybody doubt her ability to succeed, she does not come to play. We have highlights, we have notes in the margin. And so, if you're sitting here saying like, well, how do I become successful? This conversation is for you. Thank you for coming and being prepared to the show, because you are not messing around.
No, I'm not. Well, there you go. That was probably, you picked up on it, being prepared. I learned early on, as I was prepared, even as a child, when I wanted more, I just watched and studied very successful people. And that could be somebody who was successful in a teacher in the classroom, or, someone I would see even in Girl Scouts or athletes. And I was always insanely curious, and that curiosity is what's led me where I am today.
Can we pause there for a second? So what I like to do is I like to see patterns, and I like to understand the pattern. And oftentimes the gap between myself and people who are watching and listening and yourself would be, okay, but what does that actually mean? When you say I studied, there's one thing to watch.
Oh, exactly.
So you and I enter in a room and we see somebody that we both like and respect and want to emulate. What is the brain doing for you to process? Like, how do you emulate? What does the study look like?
Right. That is a great question. The way they engage. Even to the point of when you handshake, you give someone a strong, firm handshake, to the way you greet, hug, smile, the warmth, what attracted me to really great people. And that's what I watched and studied. So as I would listen to individuals that talked about certain subjects, if I didn't understand a word, I always would take that away and I would go back and research it. I think that if you are not curious and not listening, you will miss the mark. And so I think if you look at my background, folks are always saying, you are involved in so many different areas. And that was by design, because I would meet really interesting people, even as a young person, and I would just listen and ask lots of questions, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And if I could share that little nugget later, I found that helped me in my life growing up as a child to get ahead. And I don't mean get ahead like putting others behind me, but it allowed me to get the attention of my teachers. because I would ask a question, they would get curious. Because sometimes when you do not have a whole lot, you may be treated as less than, so you may not get the attention from a teacher because you're not dressed at the same caliber of some of your classmates. I'm going to share a lot. My last name as a child, because I was with a single mother, changed 3 times in elementary school. So that would create a lot of questions about, why did your last name change again? And there were just dynamics going on, but that allowed me, if I were being looked, I don't want to say less upon, I knew that I could learn and study, and there was nothing going to hold me back. And so if there was a subject, whether it was science or math or reading, and I couldn't pronunciate a word, I would go back and I would listen to the teacher say it, and I would just rewrite it over and re-say it over and over again.
I literally feel like I am watching a version of myself. Before we get there, I have to say, my father immigrated from Mexico, and he didn't learn how to read English. Very smart, but was put into like the dumb track because he couldn't speak English. And so he didn't learn how to read until he was about like 24-ish. And he was teaching his kids how to read, and he was teaching himself how to do it. And to this day, my dad and I share books. And when there's a word that he doesn't understand, he underlines it in the back of the margin. He'll go through and he looks it up. And so by the time I intercept a book from my dad, I get to see a glossary of the words that he's learning. And so I see that, and I want to put a pin in the idea of the changes you went through as a child and what brought about your success. And I want to put a pin there. If we're in a elevator and we're going down 4 floors, what do you tell me you do? What have you achieved? And then let's go back and start with that story.
Absolutely. So my career actually began in education. It was not intended. I had started college with the intention of becoming an orthodontist, of all things. Why? Because I had a crush on my orthodontist. And
but you have great teeth. I mean, let's get to that too.
Thanks to my mother. That is something my mother, if she heard this right now, she will tell you.
Same as my dad.
My mother is all about the smile. And so we did not have a lot, but guess what?
We got braces.
We got braces, and she made sure we had great teeth. And I had a really cute orthodontist, and he had this amazing office, drove a Porsche, and I thought, that's what I want to be. So I had gone to school, and my first year in college, I had someone recruit me into the financial aid office because I was researching about how am I going to pay for college. And there was a person who recruited me, and long story short, they recruited me to work behind the desk. And instead of going into dental school, I ended up finishing school, but going up through an academic process of getting to know the deans. And that was probably the best decision I ever made because they supported my college journey at that point in time. But I had a knack for it. This is when computer systems were first coming into play, and they were deploying their first set of, your first student information system, and they were clueless. They were still on typewriters, if you can imagine. This would have been in the mid-'80s. I was really good at figuring that out quickly. And at 20, I had started a consulting business because I had set this college up with their platform. They got wind of it. They needed me. And before you know it, I had probably consulted with about 20 different community colleges in California before the age of 22.
So you built your first business when you were 20?
I was. And I started that, and then I got, I started as a consultant, and then I was converted into a full-time employee. So I was probably one of the youngest directors. I had migrated up through, I'd gone to Fresno City College, then up to San Joaquin Delta College up in Stockton when they offered me a director role. And I was really young at the time, and I thought, wow, I'm going to do this. And it took off from there. And so I became very well known for re-engineering systems in the campuses. Delta College at that point in time up in Stockton was one of the first schools that deployed electronic funds transfers for student payments. I had initiated that project with the IT department. And I always was just like, this is one of those skills. I was actually inherently lazy, so if I could figure out a way to make my job easier so I didn't have to put as much effort, I did that. And that skill proved to be very effective for me because then I could see that in technology. I'm like, this is way too much work. All of this stuff is so much paper, and we're cutting manual checks. And so I talked about electronic funds transfers, and before you know it, I'm like, this will make my life a whole lot easier. So it was always about how can I make my workload easier? Born out of being lazy, I guess is the best way you could say it, because it was a lot of effort. And so that is where my career took off. I was able to go into consult. That led me into other channels. I began speaking about it at conferences. That got the attention of others. Citibank came along. They were in the student loan business. Then they grabbed me. So my career, I was in that role where I was always being pulled forward into the next position until 2008 when the markets collapsed and I was in the banking industry. So that was the first time I was left without a job. So I'd done this long career in education where I was a director and did work, and I was out of work and I thought, what do I do now? And a couple months into my hiatus, I like to call it, I had a group of career schools in this is when I was out in the Nashville area out of Kentucky, who recruited me over, and I was just like, I'm not going to go work at these career schools, because there was kind of an elitist attitude amongst the levels of institutions.
Yes.
There's career schools and there's community colleges and Cal States, and I had done all these like professional development roles. And I had a recruiter and a colleague saying, no, you want to talk to them, Ena. So I did, and I talked to them, and that led me into the private career college education space, which was classified as for-profit. And that opened my eyes up to a whole other world, because I didn't realize how difficult that educational space was, because they were heavily scrutinized. But I figured out and cleaned up a lot of messes, cleaned up some audits. That created now I got another reputation. So I got known in the industry because I was in these career schools of fixing gnarly problems.
Okay.
So if there were a group of investors who bought a school that was in trouble because they weren't doing things correctly, I would be brought in to say, can you take a look at it? And I would clean up the audit, put up tight systems, get them compliant so these schools could be successful. And that just continued on until March of 2020. I joined a PE-backed group of schools here on the West Coast. I had worked for the CEO. I had previously worked with her. She was amazing. And she says, Ena, I need you to join me. I have this tiny little school group up in the Bay Area that just got acquired by a private equity group. And their portfolio companies are in healthcare. And then 5 years later, we grew it now to one of the largest nursing schools on the West Coast. And that was an amazing experience, because I learned the world of private equity. I understood the mechanics of how to get a company ready to exit over a 5-year period. Worked with an amazing team of executives, and many of them are still today. And we sold the company in March of 2020, right before COVID hit. And it was on a Friday, and I'll never forget that. We sold it, and then the following week, we were closing down campuses because COVID hit. Our new investors at that point in time were freaking out, but guess what they needed at that point in time?
Technology.
Nurses.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Nurses. We were the largest nursing schools. And so it was the best investment they ever made, because all of a sudden we were in demand, and we deployed technology to go with it. We had the online platforms to scale and move quickly. We moved our theory online just like that, and created simulation labs. They had amazing simulation labs for these nurses. And we were getting calls from the state, how quickly can we get these nurses deployed out into the field? Because we had a bunch of them backed up in the pipeline. It was an incredible period, but also kind of crazy at the time.
So what I hear are distinct times of hiatus, to where you're being pulled up and through industries, and a financial collapse in 2008, and then it causes you to reevaluate things.
What I'm going to do.
And causes you to step into an industry that's highly scrutinized and sometimes looked down upon, to which you go in and you become a fixer. You're a cleaner-upper. And you become so good at that you come back to the West Coast with a private equity firm and say, we're going to sell something in 5 years, and I want you to be the person to get us there. And then you achieve that, and then on the back of that sale, you guys go and do the impossible, which is to facilitate the sale, make them most profitable, make that investment ROI positive within 12 months at minimum.
It was just, you took a really low period, and it actually ended up being a really great period.
Incredible.
And that company today is doing amazing work in the nursing space. They took off from there. So it's interesting. So I had that successful run, and I opted to leave and go to another company. And this is something I'm going to give a little nugget, is I was fortunate to get a little piece of that sale, right? Because I was part of the team.
Good for you.
and I had my own little liquidity event. So I had prepared for that. I kind of knew something was going to be coming. So I was already researching about how do I take this little chunk of this nugget I'm going to get, find some tax-friendly investment opportunities. I had a really good CFO friend. He said, Ena, you've never had one of these before, but I'm going to tell you, get ready because your taxes are going to be right there. So you got to figure it out. So I did. And, but what I found was we exited the company. We sold. It was a great day. I don't even think that you can win the lottery and have the best feeling ever that when you're part of a sale.
That's right.
That is something you earned.
What did you do that day?
So that day, I literally cried. I took a snapshot of my bank account when the wires hit because there was a group of us saying, you know, did it hit? Did it? And then I get a buzz. Check your account because a deal isn't done until the wires hit the bank.
That's right.
So I'm going to tell you, I've been involved with a lot of deals, and then they cry, and it's the 11th hour. I said, it's never done until those go through. I did not think I would ever see a bank account like that before. So, but it happened during COVID. So I actually was pretty smart about that. I leveraged that really bottom of the market and did some strategic things that I got lucky with, because a lot of us got lucky if you happen to have that event. But after a few days, I wasn't happy. So it says, you know, money doesn't make you happy. I'm just going to say that. And what I realized is that it was a great time. It represented all my hard work, and I was able to change the trajectory of my family and what we were doing. But I still had an itch. And I had left and gone to another company. It still wasn't enough. And a year and a half ago, I walked away after doing a lot of spiritual work. That's a whole other story. I went to 3 Dr. Joe events, Dr. Joe Dispenza events. After the first one, came back and resigned from my job with no position lined up. And I just said, I trust and believe that I'm going to figure this out. So for me to be sitting here in front of you a year and a half later from that decision, where I was a COO of another education company, and we were going to be doing the same thing, and to say, you know, I've got more to give, and I'm going to do it in a different way and do more impact work. I had done 30 years in the education space with students, and that is my heart and soul, is like giving back, and that's why I love the education space. I just didn't love the operational heavy lifting anymore. I'd done that for too long.
So that's where I want to pick up the story, because there's a lot of people who might not have been a part of another team trying to replicate the previous success that you had and you're a COO. That might not be somebody's story, but they're at a point to where they know it's no longer serving them and they have more to give. And what we've seen, or what I've seen and heard and researched over your stories, is this is not the first time you've been in this position. And so you have successfully continued to grow even after making a big, bold decision to leave. So there's somebody who either wants to leave, either knows they have more to give, and either has just left. So walk us through maybe the top 3 things that you have done in the past, find your next best path, and what you're doing right now to emulate those 3 things.
Right, your next. Well, I will tell you, you know, they always talk about there's different forms of capital. Probably outside of actual real cash are your networks. That is probably the biggest form of capital that you have, because if you're going to make a change, you better make sure you have your tribe around you. And this desire to make a change and move forward, because I lived in different parts of the country, those relationships that I had curated over the 25 years of my career proved to be very valuable later in time, whether it was individuals who mentored me along the way, or even as I curated new relationships, because they always say you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. You should have your 5 people around you. You need to have people around you that you can elevate up. So I was elevating up always through this process. And when I decided to look for my next, and I was gearing up for it, I always got this itch about every 5 years, right? It's like, okay, I just stretched myself, and then I'm getting bored, and I kind of have to have a little, I got to get scared again. And then I always found, and I've done this probably 5 times in my career, and I look back now, I didn't know it at the time, but I see it now, that you need to have some fear in your belly, and that's when you know you're pushing. And you hear those stories, but and it gets really painful for a short window, because you're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Before it gets better. So as I made that decision that I was going to exit, I was fortunate that I had a runway. So, you know, some people don't have a financial runway where they can say, I'm going to take a year off. I had that exit 2.5 years earlier. I was in the COO role. And I looked at my husband and I said, instead of taking this bonus, and reinvesting it, we're going to invest it in me, right? Because you always talk about, oh, you go put this in this asset class and you can get an 8 or 10% return. And I said, we're going to put it in me because I'm going to bring you back a 50% return on that money. I don't know what that looks like, but I believe in me, and we're going to go redesign this and see what it looks like. And I'm going to get off the W-2 job for the first time in my career, and I am going to create at least 5 income streams, so not one will hold me hostage, so I could be free to create, and my life has never been the same. And last year, Tiger came knocking on my door, Tiger 21.
Okay, well, we need to pause there because I had wrote in my notes how to get to the next. Number 1 was your network. You got to get around the right tribe around you. Number 2 was you got to get the fear in your belly, and it's painful before it gets better. What was 3?
So number 3, you need to financially prepare. I'm not going to lie. You need to have a budget.
Thank you.
I mean, let's not be unrealistic here. If you know you're miserable, actually misery is what makes me, that's my springboard.
That's
right.
It
is.
That's right.
So if you're not happy and you're financially not in a position, then get yourself a budget, line it up, start trimming back and get ready, because it's like going on a diet. You need to go on a financial diet and go look at those apps. I did that. I went on a financial diet the year before, and I started trimming and cutting. And, I think having, I have 2 daughters. I'm going to tell this to parents out there. Your number 1 job as a parent is to get them off your payroll as fast as possible. And I did. And I have great girls, and that was a piece of it. So I knew that my 2 daughters were adults and they were moving on. And, but I did a lot of financial trimming.
Good for you. Okay. So let's get into Tiger. There might be people who are not familiar. Can you give us like that version? Because that was one of the things that initially really piqued my interest.
So I was not aware of Tiger until last summer. This is where.
Wow.
So
okay.
I have to tell you, I'm a big believer when you create a strong intention that you're going to redesign and you put it out there and you ask for it. I'm very, mindful of that, whether you call it the divine God or the universe. I was intentional. And so last August, literally, I was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event in Marco Island, and I get a call from a recruiter saying, hey, we'd like to talk to you. And I picked up the phone and I say, have you heard of Tiger 21? I said, no, I don't know anything about that group. I'm going to send you some materials.
I've known about Tiger 21 longer than you have.
You have.
Stop right now.
I know. I
didn't know this part of your story.
Yes, I did not know anything.
So you are actually at the Dispenza event.
I'm at the Dispenza event. I take a call.
Oh, this is stop. I have chills in my right arm.
I know. I cannot believe it. And I had a friend of mine who I had taken to her. It was her first time. So it was my second event. I'd gone to Dr. Joe in January.
Okay, hold on. I need to pause. Because for people who are not familiar with Dr. Joe's Dispenza, his work is amazing. He really focuses on brain elasticity and literally being aware of your subconscious, bringing your subconscious to your conscious awareness, which is where we take action, where we start seeing things and where we start bringing things into our life. Not because they didn't exist before, but we see them differently because the subconscious has brought it up to the conscious. So the fact that she was at this event and she had said, I want to make a change, and then a recruiter called her at this event, I'm sorry, like blinking blig lights. Okay.
You have no idea that whole trip in itself. There's so many other little great little nuggets.
Girl, that's favor.
It's not only so let me rewind just a second on that particular trip because you're going to enjoy this.
Yes, I will. Give me the tea.
Okay, so I'm bringing a friend of mine with me that I had met at another event and she's incredible. She does breath work, somatic breath work. She does big event planning. I was there supporting another colleague of mine who was a keynote speaker in Las Vegas. She says, Ena, I want to create with you. And I'm like, why me? She goes, there's something going on with you and I want to create with you. Because I had just gone to my first Dr. Joe event. So long story short, fast forward, for her birthday, I said, you're going to go to the Dr. Joe event in in September with me, right? She says, I said, but this is what it takes because they sell out fast.
Yes.
So we get there. She's so excited. It's her first. It's my second. So I already know the drill. We're checking. We walk in and we got there early, walk into the hotel, and the lady pulls us aside. It happens to be the front manager. And she says, ladies, I said, are you here for the Dr. Joe event? And I said, yes, we are. And she says, so I've got a little offer I'd like to make for you. We have one penthouse left on the top floor. And it's the last one. We're going to unload it. It's only an extra $70 a night. I knew it was
okay.
She goes, do you want it? And I knew it was Seppi's birthday, and we were rooming together. And she goes, it's a beautiful view. It's a VIP level. And I looked at her. I already was like thinking, okay, if they're saying it's VIP, I said, we're doing it. Happy birthday. That's what I told Seppi. It's a beautiful room. And I said, you do know we have a shot of running into Dr. Joe on this floor.
Oh, right.
Right? His room was right next to us. So they saved, and she goes, you do know that they saved that one room next to his room because they don't want guests disturbing.
Right.
And we were selected, so we could hear him next door. I knew he thought we were cuckoo birds because we were playing our meditations in the morning. I'm sure he's hearing his own voice, into nothing and all these things. But it was an incredible event, and it was there, yes, that I had gotten a phone call. And you turn your phones off. So I happened to be on a break just to check in and make sure there was no family emergencies, and there's a recruiter on there, and that's when I got the Tiger 21 recruiter.
And so you start doing research of Tiger 21. Can you use it to describe what it is?
So I started doing research. So Tiger 21 is a peer-to-peer group for ultra high net worth individuals. So these are wealth creators and entrepreneurs who have either had a liquidity event or they've exited, and they are now looking to be around other individuals who are dealing with similar problems, opportunities, or solutions that they may be dealing with.
And what's the normal threshold?
The normal threshold is they have to have at least $20 million of investable assets. So it doesn't
dun,
include
y'all.
20 million.
I was researching, I was like, 20 million. This is a different class of people. So this is liquidity. This is not.
Yes, this is a different class. So if you've heard of Vistage or YPO, this is the graduate school of this group. It's an exclusive
That's so nice
group.
To say. That's
And the reason you don't know about Tiger 21, it's by design. Only the chairs are the ones who can really talk about Tiger. They do a little bit of marketing because we do protect our members. That they all sign NDAs, and they want the private space to have these conversations. Now, members are free to disclose if they're a member, and some of them do because they'll do, interviews and they'll promote and talk to others. But as a chair, we protect the identity of our members for obvious reasons. And so as I'm reading this and I'm thinking, they want to talk to me about being a chair for Newport Beach. I see that they have over 100 cohorts around the world. So it isn't just in the US. And I'm thinking, why me? Why now? And I'm part of a couple of peer groups. So I'm in another one called Exceptional Women Alliance. These are C-level executive women, and they're like my sisters. It's not like a chief or other organization. This is where we already know what's on the resume. This is about the whole woman, what's going on and how we've climbed and gone through this, and a couple of others. And I call my friend Amy. I said, Amy, I just got this call from this group about Tiger 21. I don't know why they're talking to me. Because this is what happens, right? Our biggest enemy is what goes on up here.
Right.
And she goes, honey, I know why they're talking to you, because you know how to bring people together. And I go, but I'm not a big investor. I'm not that level. And she says, that's not what they want from you. They're looking for somebody that knows how to curate and is authentic. And I said, oh, I think I can do that. And as I began to lean into what my gifts and skills and talents were, what made me successful as I was working with big companies and fixing problems was my ability to, pull together the best of the best people in teams. And I never wanted to be the person, nor did I want to be the expert. So I know what I don't know. And I know how to find really good people. And this is the other key to success. Don't act like you know everything. You are a great leader when you know what you don't know, but you go find the experts that do know what they're doing, and you surround them and you trust them. And so I really leaned into that. And so as I went through that 6-month recruitment process, which was very difficult, I've worked for Citibank and all these other organizations. I don't think I've ever gone through that many rounds of interviews and screening. And when they finally made the decision and said, we'd like to have you take on this role, I thought, this is amazing, because but what I'm so proud of is that I'm a woman doing it. There's not a whole lot of women at that level, not just the chairing role, but just when you start moving up the career ladder, it gets more and more lonely, whether you're an executive woman, an entrepreneur, and you're climbing that ladder, but that is shifting. And it's shifting because there's a big wealth transfer that's happening. And I think as I really thought about the role, I thought, not only do I want to do this, I am so excited. What a blessing that I get to be around really smart, amazing people, not just here, but around the world.
Right.
And so having participated now in several Tiger meetings and observed it, my group is launching in August. I'm very pleased. So I was able to curate it pretty quickly. I have my founding members lined up for August, and I'm moving forward and setting it up in the fall to be a woman and to hold my own. And I think working in private equity, in boardrooms, having executive gravitas, all of those things that I've built over the years, it was a perfect fit. And I'm not going to say, well, I was comfortable. I was a little nervous, right? Because now I'm now getting introduced into a world that I've never really been exposed to other than the work that I did. It goes back to I wanted something different. I wanted to do more. And if I can have an impact and create a peer group setting with these individuals. So Tiger creates a confidential peer space for these ultra high net worth individuals to talk about financial dynamics, philanthropic causes, family issues. I know they like to say it's rich people problems. There are, when they say more money, more problems, it's true.
Right.
It gets really complicated. There's estate planning, talking about investments, but the most powerful piece of this really private peer setting is there's no selling. If you want to propose a deal, there's deal rooms that they can put them in there. But it's a space where these members can talk to peers about everything. And the more vulnerable you are, the more willing you are to learn and share what you know, the more powerful the group is, and I've seen it.
Can I pause here? Because there's so many people who are listening and saying, wow, like I want rich people problems and I want more money, more problems. Okay, having said that, there is an ascension model. Nobody wakes up with a $20 million liquidity event.
No.
So there's paths to get there, and then I heard you be a part of different groups. So along your iteration, taking the collective look at the groups you've been a part of, what have you done? So I love investing in education and groups like that. What have you done to maximize those events? And so this is for the person who's listening and watching, and you have invested $5,000 in small group coaching, or $25,000 or $45,000 in a mastermind, or a part of, Chief, Hampton, YPO.
Right.
And then Tiger 21 is very much the pinnacle of where many of us would like to be. And we're just not there yet.
No, I will be a member someday.
That's right.
That's right. It's just not today, but it will be.
That's right. I'm echoing that. And I want it to be an osmotic exchange right now. It's like, however you do it, let me follow right there in your shadow. Like, I'm going to be there. Having said that, you've done things in different groups to really maximize those experiences. And I have had questions and had people say, okay, well, I'm a part of a mastermind, or I'm a part of this group, and I'm not getting what it is that I want from it. So how do you maximize what you're getting in these groups that will eventually, now you're chairing it, but you're chairing it until you're in it. What are you doing? What are like 3 tips that when you're part of a group setting to maximize getting an ROI on that investment?
Well, that is actually really good. It's a great question. I just had this conversation. So obviously I'm not only chairing Tiger, but I'm involved with a couple of others. It is, if there is a volunteer opportunity within that group.
Ooh, that's good. Okay.
You should take advantage of that every single time. And a lot of folks get in the group and they just want to learn. But the groups, there's always an opportunity to lead or curate a subgroup. And there are subgroups even within Tiger.
So good.
And there are subgroups within, there's a programming group within the Exceptional Women's Alliance, EWA. I'm on the board. I mentor other women. Why? Because you get more deeply ingrained. The most powerful piece of all of this is building that relationship. And the more people know you, and not through an authentic, real relationship, they can endorse you or they will network you with other individuals. That is so, so important. So volunteer within the subgroup and make yourself actually more valuable, and you stick out that way. Because more and more people will lean into you as now you're kind of the expert of that subject. You may not necessarily be, but you're forced to be all of a sudden when you take on a leadership role. So get in there and then volunteer for whatever opportunity they have for you. And, if there's always little additional calls, opportunities, get on all of them and get there early. You've paid for this, so go all in. You get what you put into it. And I have been in several of these groups where some individuals will say, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Well, how much of that was you? Or was it the group? At the end of the day, you control your own destiny.
That's right.
And time is valuable, and there are people in there that are doing really great work. And speak up. If you have a particular skill set in a particular area, bring it forward. Do not hold that knowledge back. The more you share in these groups, all of a sudden folks will not forget. They're like, oh, I just heard her talking about this particular space. And, let's get to know her more. Well, then all of a sudden that connects you more. It's a huge ripple effect.
So on that note, I'm going to repeat back what I heard. Number one, how to get the maximum ROI on investments like a group coaching or mastermind is, number one, volunteer within the group. Or you could possibly lead a subgroup as it builds relationships to help other people endorse you. Number two, get on all additional calls or opportunities to maximize it. You never know where you're going to get your ROI. And three is to speak up for what you have. But can I also add for what you want?
Yes. You should be asking what you want. That is a very good point. Too many times, and one of the things that I always do, because this is my way of giving back, it's probably why you got a hold of me. I really will talk to anybody, even the young people. And, I get a lot of solicitations in LinkedIn and other social media pages and emails. And if I can squeeze the time in, I will take it. And the reason I will talk to younger, it could be an account manager that's trying to sell their product or their platform. I'll take the call, I'll listen to the pitch, and I always give them feedback. I may not necessarily be interested in their product, but I give them feedback. And the reason I do that, and this has paid off for the last 15 years of my career, the fact that they have that gumption, they're working that hard, I know that they have a paycheck that they have to earn. But if they're really good, in 5 years, they'll never forget that I took their call.
That's right.
And then I give them some feedback, and then all of a sudden, and I get this all the time, they're like, Ena, I remember you gave me that shot when you were a decision maker, and I know you didn't sign on the dotted line, but it meant so much to me, and I learned so much from the questions that you asked me, because I will drill them, and then I say, okay, let me give you a little advice. You know what? You got this much time. What is your ask? Because that's the issue, is that get to the point. I've listened to so many sales pitches. Get right to it. Say, this is my name. This is what I need. And I do that today, whether I'm doing the Private Directors Association. They're really good about that. We sit down, we do the 30-second elevator pitch and say, this is what I'm working on. Folks know I'm working on Tiger 21. So what's my ask? I'm the new Newport Beach Cohort 3 chair. I'm looking for great individuals that meet this area for my peer group. If you know someone that you can introduce me to, or you may be interested, help, and that's it. And so you just come right out and you say it and be bold about it. And people respect that. And because I know folks are busy. I'm busy, but get to your ask quickly.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ena Hull, right before we turned on the cameras, she had said, I might not be the smartest bear in the forest, but I can sniff my way out of it. And I thought to myself, right there is an encapsulation of somebody who is maximizing this opportunity. As a brief recap, one of the things that we talked about was her ability to find a way to learn. From childhood, it was going to be how to say a word. And into adulthood, it's how to find people of 20 million plus net worth beyond net worth after a liquidity event. And she's using the same principles and applications that she did as a child into adulthood. And then as she's had many iterations of her career, when she's focused on the next, it was number one, to network. And number two, to get that fear in your belly, embrace it, know that it's normal. And number three was to be financially prepared. She also reminded us that being a good leader is to know who to ask for help, because you're not expected to know everything. She said, I wanted something different and I wanted something more. That's my mantra as I am in a phase of figuring out what that next thing is. And it's okay for me to say, I want something different and I want something more. And lastly, getting ROI on things that maybe you're listening to this and you want to make an investment and you're not quite sure. Well, using her 3 principles, or maybe you've made an investment and you feel like it's not the best fit. Applying, volunteering within the group. If you're not getting what you want, create that space. Number 2, to get on additional calls and opportunities. And number 3 was to speak up for what you have and also for what you want. Ena, how do people go deeper and find and connect with you?
So LinkedIn is probably the best place for me. It's because I do a lot of business work there.
That's how I found you. That's how the team that's how we did it.
Exactly. LinkedIn and young people,
Yes. You have an affinity. That was one of the things in your bio that really stuck out to me. You want to pour into the next generation.
I do want to pour into the next generation, and I will tell young people all the time, build out your LinkedIn. Actually, I have to give credit to my youngest daughter. when she was dating before she found her amazing boyfriend today. But she never asked for your Instagram. She goes, I want to see your LinkedIn.
Ooh.
So young people,
Good
that's how
for
she,
her.
exactly. I don't
Good
want to know
for
what's on
her.
Facebook or Instagram. Let me see your LinkedIn, because that is the professional bio. That's the things that are going on. So I do spend most of my time on LinkedIn, because that's where I was actually an early adopter of LinkedIn.
Good for
very
you.
early on. So it's a powerful tool if you leverage it.
Ena, well, good job, Mama Bear, because you have a cub that sniffed her way out of the forest.
That's right, she did.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Jasmine Star Show. Ena, thank you for sharing your
welcome.
brilliance and blessing other people and teaching us how to learn how to speak words we do not understand until we repeat them back. It is honor and a privilege. Thank you for listening to the Jasmine Star Show.